Today we're making risotto alla Milanese, a northern Italian classic. We'll follow the traditional approach to really understand the principles, starting with the choice of rice. In most supermarkets in the English-speaking world, risotto rice often means arborio rice. For this particular recipe, Carnaroli rice is often preferred. It's longer, slightly more narrow, it has a firmer bite and holds its shape better. And of course, it's high in starch content, what's going to give us the creaminess. We start our recipe by soaking our saffron in warm stock, ideally around 60 to 70 degrees Celsius, to gently extract the color and aroma. If you want to go the extra mile, crush the saffron in a pestle mortar beforehand. Now we build our base. Some butter, and traditionally, bone marrow for that luxurious texture and subtle savory depth. We're using raw marrow, not cooked, because we want the fat. Once the marrow is mostly melted, we add our minced onion for the aroma and sweetness. And we cook them gently to evaporate the water content and concentrate the flavors we just mentioned. We're not looking for any form of browning here. For the home kitchen, you can use a fine grater, a technique often suggested by Mr. James Beard, so that the onions almost dissolve into the dish. Very gentle heat. Once there's not much steam coming out, you can hear a slight sizzle and you can see the onions are translucent. We toast our rice. The objective of the exercise here is for the fat to coat the rice grains, forming a barrier so that when we do add our stock, the starch gelatinizes slowly and the grain softens gradually and evenly. Of course, the toasting will also give us a slightly nutty undertone. Once everything's beautifully coated, we add our dry white wine for acidity to balance the richness of the dish. And we cook out the alcohol to remove the harshness. Once you can no longer smell the alcohol, we start adding our stock, following the classic approach of one ladle at a time. This will gently release the surface starch from the grains, slowly forming our starch, fat, and water emulsion, what's going to give us the signature creamy texture. And Carnaroli rice takes up to 20 minutes to cook, so this is a very slow and gentle exercise. And today we're using veal stock for the gelatine and the umami. It's important to keep your stock hot so you maintain the gelatinization and the starch release in the pot. And we continue to stir, rubbing the grains against each other for the starch to be released. Only until there's no visible liquid, you add the next ladle. Now, about halfway through cooking, we add our saffron-infused liquid so that it has enough time to infuse properly, but not so long that the aromatics would become muted. And you add the liquid as well as the saffron for them to continue to release flavors. Of course, nothing goes to waste. This is the sound you want to hear, like a wave. Once everything is creamy and loose, the rice al dente at its core, and you can hear the sound of the wave, stove off, and we start incorporating some cold butter, bit by bit, to give us the signature gloss and add some more richness to the dish. This, of course, will also cool down the pot, getting it ready for our cheese. Only when it's fully emulsified, we add the next one. Now, our 30 months aged Parmigiano for umami, salt, and richness. And ideally, you want your pot to be around 70 degrees Celsius for the cheese to not split or curdle, which the butter should have done the job. And the Parmigiano is the reason we didn't season with salt at all, knowing that this is going to be salty. So we're backloading the salt and the seasoning to have more control. This is especially important if you're using store-bought stock, factoring in they could be salty themselves. Once again, work everything in, make it as cheesy as you like. If it gets too sticky, you can always thin it with a bit more stock. And that's risotto alla Milanese.